Hello everyone, it's Elisa from GCC CTLE, and I'm going to do a quick session on teaching research with NoodleTools. So first off, what is NoodleTools? So it's a tool that I've been using this semester in my English 102 freshman composition course. It's basically an online platform designed to be a one-stop support system for students' research. So in the past, we've been using citation generators, and many of them have been bought out or they're just riddled with ads. And so when I was looking for something new, I got a great recommendation from one of our librarians. And not only did I find a new citation generator, but this product, NoodleTools, also includes a thesis writing feature, research planner, due date reminder, note card generator, development space, Google Docs for collaborating, and of course just the citation generator. Now this is great because in the past when I started teaching online, I gave up this idea of using note cards because it was difficult to manage having students write physical note cards and then what are they going to do, mail them to me, take pictures of them. It really became unfeasible for my students to use note cards, and I was really excited to be able to use them again, and that's one of the reasons why I picked up on this new program. So I'm going to show you how some of this stuff works. Now the way I started was first I wanted to create a project template in NoodleTools, and the reason behind this is that I wanted to set it up so that students would know exactly what to do and where to do it and keep it all in one spot. So I didn't want them just to go in and create their own projects, which they can do, but I wanted to set it up so that I could teach them how to use it. So I'm going to go through and show you just quickly how I did the first step, which was creating a project template in NoodleTools. Also, I'll share these slides with you, and this link is a link to a video from the actual company showing you how to do it as well. Okay, so I'm in my NoodleTools account, and you can see that I have several projects set up already. And it's really easy to set up a template. It's the same thing as setting up a project. So you just hit New Project, and what you'll do is give your project a title, choose the citation style that you want for your students to use, and the citation level. So advanced for college is perfect because it gives them 70 different forms in which to use to cite their sources. If you have a different group, maybe high school or even Dev Ed, you might want to use the junior. It gives them a smaller set of tools to use when they're adding citations. And when you create the project template, the students will not be able to choose the style of citation or the level because you will have already set it up for them. So here you can see I have my project template, and so a couple of the things that I wanted to do was to make sure that the students had examples of the things that I wanted for them to do. So when I go into sources, I wanted to add just a couple of sources so they could see what a source would look like before. So I would just go in and create a new citation and add it to my template. Same thing with note cards. If I wanted them to see what the note cards look like, I could create a couple of those and put it in the template, and then of course I can create an outline and add that to it as well. So creating an outline is pretty simple. You can see here that it's easy just to add topics, subtopics, and depending on where you are when you create or when you hit the plus button, it will give you a different level and so forth. Okay, so back on the main dashboard, once you give the project template all of the elements that you want, your citations, your note cards, your outline, then what you do is you make the project public, and by making it public it creates this URL for you, and then you share this URL with your students. Once they click the URL, they are then able to copy this project into their own accounts, and by doing that they will have all of the same information that you set up for them. Now one of the other things that I like to do with this is create a to-do list. So down here at the bottom I can quickly add things to the to-do list. So if I want for them to create note cards or an outline or an annotated bibliography, and then of course they need a reference page, I can do that and set it up and add in the due dates for them, and now they have this to-do list. And so as they come in, they'll be able to see this to-do list and know when to do these things. Of course, this is all also set up in your class. All right, so once you've created your project and you shared it with your students, they can then use it and finish the project out in any way that you want. Now I did that for the first part of the class. I had them in groups and I created a template and they all worked on that. Okay, so then in the second part of the class, I had students creating their own projects. So I'm going to walk you through this process of having students create new projects in NoodleTools as well. Again, there's another video that's created from NoodleTools to show you how to do it. So that's one of the neat things about NoodleTools too, is that there's a lot of help available. And so if you don't want to create tutorials for your students, there's a lot of materials already developed. Okay, so I instructed students to come into NoodleTools and click New Project. I tell them very clearly what their options are, and I make sure that they choose APA and Advanced because I want them to have all of the different forms available for creating citations. So they give their project a title, choose APA and Advanced. So here's an example. Net neutrality was one of the papers that we worked on earlier. And so in this dashboard area, students can add in their research question, and then they add in a thesis or hypothesis, whatever it is that you're, or however it is that you're referring to it. It also keeps a history, a log of how much work a student is doing on their project, and you can actually go in and look at that if you wanted to. And if you wanted them to use Google Docs to write this paper, when they get to that point, you can add the paper right here as well. I tell students that they don't have to make their projects public, but they will submit their projects to me in a Dropbox. So all the students do is hit this share with a project inbox, and once I've set up the inbox, they just type in the name of the inbox and then share it. If they did set up the Google Doc, they need to click this button here so that I will have access to that document as well. And then one last thing that I can do again is I can explain to them to create their own to-do list if I wanted for them to keep track of some important things. But I pretty much do that in Canvas with the assignments. So once they have created their project and they've given it research question and title, the next step is to work on your sources and the note cards. So I'll quickly go through how to create a new citation in NoodleTools. Now that the students have their project set up and they've shared it with the instructor, now it's time to add some of those great sources to it. So I'll show you how to add them, how to edit them, and also how to add and edit annotations if you want for them to do an annotated bibliography. And that was one of their first assignments, was the annotated bibliography. Okay, so from the dashboard, you'll go into Sources. And students didn't have any trouble with this. So you can see that I've already added some citations with some annotations in there. And all they have to do to create their new citation is hit this green Create New Citation button. Now what happens is they get just a basic, selection, and if they are working on websites, print-based articles, databases, they choose that. So let's say they did a website, and now once that opens up, they then choose, well, what kind of website is it? And so this is really good because if students really aren't sure, I always tell them just to pick web page first, and then this tutorial pops up. Now if they're pretty sure that they have a website and they don't want to go through the tutorial, they can just hit continue. But if they're not quite sure, they can hit this button and it will walk them through this 14 slide presentation that talks about what a web page is. It helps them identify some of the key things. Just because you're on the web doesn't mean it's a website. It could be a flash file or a PowerPoint or a Word document. So it talks a little bit about that, and it just goes through this tutorial. And once they're finished with the tutorial, they can close it, and then it basically are saying, now if your source is not a website, it might be, and it gives them some suggestions, and they can click on that to see if maybe they have one of these sources. But if they are pretty clear that they have a website, they hit continue, and then it takes them to the input area. And this is where they can generate their citations. Now, what's really neat about this is that they're just not left alone to figure out what goes in each box. If I click on this URL box, a little help menu or dialog box pops up and tells me what to put in this box if I'm not sure. It works with everyone. So here's the date. If I'm looking for a role, what kind of a role, with the author's first name. And here's another little box down here, web page, article title, talks about what's important and what goes in here and so forth. So once a student has completed that part, and added all of the information, the citation shows up here. So here's a citation without anything with it. So once they do that, the next step is to write the annotations for the annotated bibliography. And to add that, all they have to do is hit this drop-down menu next to the source that they are looking at and click Edit Annotation. And then they just get this dialog box and they can cut and paste their annotations into this dialog box. And once they do that, it'll look like this top one here. And the best part is now students can, once they've written annotations for all of their sources, can print out annotated bibliography. And these are the different formats that they can print it out: Word, RTF, Google Docs, web page. For this, I'm just going to show you what it looks like in a web page. But before you click this, you have to instruct students to change the formatting options. Do you want for them to give you the citations and the annotations, or do you just want the citations only? So I tell students, when I want an annotated bibliography, I want citations and annotations. If I just want your references or your working bibliography, then print citations only. Alright, so for this example, we're going to do both. So I'm going to click that, hit preview as web page, and there is our annotated bibliography. And so students can go through this and cut and paste it, or like you say, download it as a Word document and then turn it in that way into Canvas. Really nice. Okay, and then lastly, if the student needs to do any edits, once again, this drop down menu, they can edit the citation or edit the annotation right here. They can also delete it here as well. So when I click edit, they just go right back into that original area where they were inputting information and work on anything that needs to be changed. Okay, so that's pretty much it for adding your sources. Okay, so the next really cool thing is creating an outline and note cards in NoodleTools. Again, there are two separate how-to documents on how to do that, but this is really neat because like I said earlier, I'd given up the assignment for students to create note cards because it was such a hassle. So let me show you how easy it is now. And it's not just about the ability to create note cards, it's also what you can do with them. For me, note cards is really helping students to organize their paper and to be able to get sources in the right spots of their paper, and then making sure that those sources are being cited correctly. I'm back on my NoodleTools dashboard, and I'm going to go to the third tab, or the fourth tab, which is note cards. And the note cards and the outline are together in the same area. So you can see on the left I have some note cards, and then on the very thin column on the right I have my outline. Now I can drag this over to make it bigger. So if I'm working on my outline, I can make it look like this, or I can make it small again. So let's work on the outline. So creating things in the outline is pretty easy. If I click on this button twice, or not button, but this link here, I can then edit and add in anything I want to add. Same thing down here. And so what you're looking at is a template that I created for students, and they had to fill in. So they were all writing on net neutrality, and they all had the same research question. So they're going to define net neutrality in this first part, then they're going to state their position, and so this was a position statement for one group. They write their thesis, etc., their topic, their arguments, argument 2, and then their counterclaim, opposing views. And so I set this up so that they would know what was needed in each section of the paper. So each student created this outline, and as we worked, they would just click on the link and add in the details of what needed to be on each area. So creating the outline is really nice, and then of course they can also print that outline out. They can just say, I want my outline only, and they can export it in all of these different formats. We'll take a quick look at the web page version, and that's what their outline should look like when they're done. Now of course I want them to go back in and write complete sentences for most of the levels, and they do that as they go. Now as far as the note cards, those are pretty easy to create as well. You can see that there's a new button, green button at the top, and when I click on this new button, this is the most exciting part for me. Students get to title their note card, so if it's a note about a specific argument in their paper, or if it's something that they might use for their conclusion, they give it just a title, whatever makes sense to them. Then instead of having to write in the source where this note is coming from, they just hit the drop down menu and all of the citations that they entered earlier are available to them. So they just go ahead and click in there, and now that will show up with this note. Now there's three areas that they're going to add information to, and you can edit these areas to give students directions. So right now it says copy paste and annotate here, and then it gives them 3 bullet points. Well, you can set it up in the template so that whatever you want for students to see in these bullet points, they will see. For instance, in my template I added that I wanted for students to use quotation marks around whatever they put in this box. So if they added in some text, add in a direct quote in this box. So they would just grab some text. I'd want them to use quotation marks around it. And then the other directive that I added to this box was that I wanted them to put an in-text citation around it. So they would start with their author's last name and then their year and the year. Alright, so if this were not a digital source, they could also add a page number. So then they would leave it at that. Now the next step is to go to the next box over here, which is your paraphrase or summary. And so now I would instruct students to take what they put in this direct quotation box and paraphrase or summarize it. And again, once they write their summary, or paraphrase, I want them to use that same in-text citation so that they know it's always there. And so there's no mistake when they add these note cards to their outline and then eventually it makes it to the paper, they will already have this hard part done, and it eliminates a lot of the plagiarism mistakes that students make. Other thing is they can also bold, italicize, highlight, underline, strike through. I mean, there's a lot of things that they can do. Change the color of the text, highlight, like I said, highlight that. And so all of these things will then show up in their notes when they add them to the outline. Up here is where they would put the page number, and if you add a URL here, then it makes it easier to get to that website if this were a website. Alright, the last box down at the bottom here are for my ideas. And my ideas, basically it's, why did you take this note? How are you going to use this information? What is it that this information, or how is it that this information is going to help you in your paper? And I tell students this is important because if you're taking notes in week 3 of the semester and you're writing your paper in week 12, you're not going to remember why you took all of the notes. So they then add in here that, this note is going to help, and then they can basically say whatever they need to. I haven't gotten around to teaching them about tagging, but they can add tags. They can set up a tag list and choose from the tags. If this is part of an argument or principle or summary or definition, they can choose that, and then it's going to follow this note for them. So let me give this a note. Alright, so I'm going to save that. Alright, and so once I save it, it gets added to my list here. And so what happens is I have all of these note cards, and what I can do is organize these note cards. So this note card is actually organized into a stack, so there's 2 there. And so when I unstack them, I can see Untitled 1, Untitled 3, etc. This one is a note card all by itself, and so each of these note cards I can handle differently, and I can set them apart by giving them tags. I can give them a color to help organize it. So all my blue note cards are going to help me support argument number 1. All of my orange note cards are going to help me support argument number 2. Maybe the green ones are going to be my opposing view, counterclaim, counter arguments note cards. The student can decide how they want to do it, and it's easy to organize them. So let's say I want to put all these cards together. I can just simply drag them into a box, and now I have 3 in there. If I want to put that one in there, and now I have 4. And so this now becomes a folder, and these are all of my opposing view note cards. And I click on it to expand it, and now those are all of my note cards. I can also use a detail view, and so all of these are still linked together, and when I click on them, the note cards pop up over here on the right. So they even look like real note cards. Okay. Same thing up here, my unpiled notes. Click on those, unclick those. Okay, and go back to tabletop view. Alright, if I want to take note cards out of a pile or out of a folder, I just drag them out and they all become separate notes again. The folder still exists even if I take all of the note cards out of it, so I will still have an opposing view folder or a pile with no notes in it, and then all my individual notes are here. Okay. Once I get students to create notes, what I want to do is drag these notes where they belong in the outline. So you can see here that anywhere where there's a little note card looking emblem or icon, that's a note card that I have drug over from over here. So I'm on this one and it shows that that one is this note card here. If I click on this, this is the note card. So the students can see what the note is. This is a duplicate. Once they want to take it out, they can drag it out. Or even if they want to move it to a different area, they can move it to a different area. So the note cards are rearrangeable, movable, taggable, make them colorable. If for some reason a student forgot to link, so let's look at the details of this note card. You can see that this has already been linked to a source, but sometimes students might create a note card and they forget to link it. They can do that, oops, there we go, by clicking the card and then clicking link to a source. So pretty neat way to be able to organize note cards. I'm a color person, so I like to, that's pretty funny, huh? I'm a color person. I like to color code things. I also like to use folders, and so all of those things that I like to do I'm able to do in this program. Okay, so let me show you one last thing, setting up an inbox. So I mentioned earlier that I can have students submit their projects to me using a inbox. And so I'm going to quickly show you how to set that up. Okay, so from the instructor view, I'm on my projects page, and all the projects that I've created, any templates or projects that I'm working on, are listed here. And then right next to that projects tab is an inboxes tab. And so what you can do as an instructor here is set up an inbox for your students to submit their assignments. So you can see here that I have a inbox for my English 102 hybrid class, and I have 16 students that have submitted their projects. And then I have another one that was a group assignment for them. They were in groups of 5, and I have 5 of those. So my online late start class, they have a project box inbox and they have not submitted anything yet. Alright, so quickly I click new project inbox, and this is where I would name the inbox. And so if you imagine if we adopted this as a campus, you'd want to make sure that you include your name, like the example, and not just English 102, because there might be 100 sections of English 102. So you would give it your name, the class, maybe your section number, and what the paper is, so students can find it. And they find it by typing in whatever you've called it. If I wanted to add additional recipients, I can add them to this inbox. I usually just tell students to find it and add it themselves. If I wanted to modify the note card instructions, so I was talking about earlier how the note cards are already set up. This is where I can add in the additional things. Use quotation marks around your direct quotes. Okay, and then I would go through each of those 3 boxes, and then I can save it or submit it. Alright, so I have these 3 inboxes, and now when I go in to look at the inboxes, I will be able to see all of my students' projects. And so over to the right, you can't see, but I have my students' names with their MEIDs in this shared by column. I can see when it was created, when it was last modified, how many sources, how many note cards they have, what style the student is using. So if I wanted to go in deeper and see what's going on with the student's project, I just go ahead and click on the project, and now I'm viewing the project as if I am the student. I still have all of the tabs up at the top, but now when I click on the sources tab, I'm seeing this student's sources. So I go in and I can look at her sources and say, okay, she's doing a pretty good job here. She's got a book, so she did the book assignment. She's got a newspaper, so she did the periodical assignment, magazine, she's got another book. And I can even leave comments and feedback for the students. I can give them compliments, or if I wanted a grade in here, I can give them a grade. Okay, so when I do that, I can require a response. So I give them a comment and then require that they respond back to me, or I can just save this comment to my comment bank so that I don't have to keep typing the same thing over and over again if I want to give feedback to that. It's really helpful in helping students learn how to create these things and being able to give them feedback on when they're creating it. I can look at their note cards. This group hasn't been required to create note cards yet, but they have been required to create outlines. And so here is the student working on her outline in this area. And then again, if they did share their paper with me, I would be able to click paper, and this is through Google Docs. So I would be able to see their Google Docs. All right, and once I go back to the dashboard, I can then go back in and find a different, or not dashboard, into projects and go in and look at a different student if I wanted to. Okay, and then the last thing I wanted to show you is that there is an administration panel, and you are able to see the last access. If all of your students have actually registered, you can see when they created their accounts and how many times they've logged in. And then lastly, there's also a log that you can go in and see what they've done when they've logged in. So you can quickly run through here and see, oh, this student has only logged in one time and it's week 13. That's not good. So actually, these are all my late start students. They've only been in here a couple weeks. So they shouldn't have too many logins, but it'll pick up. But anyway, this is nice because it allows for me to know who's at least registered for their account and who's started using it, and it helps me keep track of who's doing what. So that is it for NoodleTools. Okay, so that was just a quick overview of teaching research with NoodleTools. Right now, they do single instructor licenses. So for $60, you can use this in all of your classes for a full year. So that's 2 semesters and summer if you teach in the summer. But then they also have what they call a site license, and they price it based on footsie. And so being that Glendale's fairly large, it's probably priced out of our range. So either talk to your department chair or pony up $60.